known what is in canned peaches, I would have made probably a different choice. Last year I sat on a jury panel after a film release of a famed organic peach farmer called David Matsumoto from Fresno. And when he pulled me aside afterwards, he was like very conspiratorially, he was trying to kind of tell me a secret. And he kind of whispered it to me, and he said, you know, we tried the dried peaches, we tried the fresh ones, we tried the canned ones, and he said, you wouldn't believe it, but the canned ones pack the biggest nutrient punch. And I said, no, it doesn't, that's impossible. Because had I known that when I was a child stealing canned food, I would have probably stolen some of those. But it's true, you're talking about 4 times more vitamin C than fresh. You're talking about comparable levels of vitamin E, and you're also talking about a little bit more than average, above average folate.
That's great. Okay? That's great. I used to get them as dessert all the time when I was a kid.
Right.
So
in the entire world.
Oh, okay.
The Bosc Pears that I used them in all of the different dishes that I'm making here. So the Bosc Pears pureed in the carne marinade that I'm making right now. I also wanted to use Bosc Pears instead of Asian pears in a classic Korean kimchi. Now, when you think kimchi, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
Oh, me personally, I think about cabbage, right? And I think it's hot and spicy. So I'm saying 2 things, but that's what I think.
Right. So everyone thinks when they think kimchi, they think peach cabbage, and they think like really intense fiery heat. Well, there is a kimchi. It's one of my favorites that we eat in the wintertime. And that kimchi is called water radish kimchi. Okay, and it's quite famous, particularly in the northern part of Korea. And so, in terms of climate, in terms of temperature, in terms of terroir, it's very, very similar. Now, the best Asian pears on the other side of the globe come from China and Korea, and shares the same latitude as Washington State and Oregon. And of course, the pears, U.S. pears, second biggest selling pear operation in the entire world.
Oh, okay.
The Bosc Pears that I used them in all of the different dishes that I'm making here. So the Bosc Pears pureed in the carne marinade that I'm making right now. I also wanted to use Bosc Pears instead of Asian pears in a classic Korean kimchi. Now, when you think kimchi, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
Oh, me personally, I think about cabbage, right? And I think it's hot and spicy. So I'm saying 2 things, but that's what I think.
Right. So everyone thinks when they think kimchi, they think peach cabbage, and they think like really intense fire to make this. So the other thing that I made that includes Bosc Pears is this favorite condiment. This is called samjang. Right, you can see it's a little bit darker than the kimchi marinade to make sushi rice. I would say 8 out of 10 people, they didn't know, right? They didn't know the difference between Japanica and Kawas. 80% of the people chose the Calfornia grade as the better sushi rice to use. And to this day, for all of those 8 years now, I only use Sacramento Valley rice. Okay, so it's a beautiful grade. And here's the trick: there are purists in Japan who'll say, sushi purists who say, no, we think ours is better, right? And there is a little technique that I use to get it to that place that the Japanese sushi connoisseurs are talking about. There is a slight kind of al dente quality, but it really bursts with the natural sweetness that the Japanica grade. And it seems to work really well with rice vinegar. The trick with the Sacramento Valley rice is you wash it for a longer period of time, okay? So in instead of 20 minutes for the other grain, you'd wash it for 30 minutes. Cold water, of course. You wash it a couple of times. A lot of people think that when you're washing rice, what you should be doing is completely removing the silt from it. You know, that cloudy, right? And I remove that much less silt from the California grain than I do with the Japanese grain. And the reason why is when that silt cooks out, right, you're getting that wonderful sugars released from it. So that it does fortify the sweetness of the rice. That's what makes it great. And then the other thing is when you're letting it rest. In other words, when it's ready to go, we'd let the Japanica rice grain rest for a shorter period, and I let the California rice grain rest for a longer